Change is hard, not because you're doing it wrong, but because it asks something of you. Welcome to Change is Hard, a podcast from the Leadership Lab. I'm Audrey Blair, and this is a space for leaders who are learning how to sit with uncertainty, make decisions without rushing, and grow without losing themselves in the process. We'll talk about the moments that stretch you, the conversations you keep avoiding, and the quiet shifts that change everything. No noise, no pressure, just honest conversations about becoming the kind of leader and human you actually want to be. Let's get into it. Hi there. Thank you so much for being here. How are you? I hope that you're well. I want to thank those of you that have reached out to give me a few comments on the podcast, giving me some great feedback. And I just love hearing it and hearing from you. So thank you so much for being here. It's quite encouraging. Now, today I want to talk a little bit about, when you have someone on your team and you spotted someone that they're the go-to, like people go to them, people trust them, they get things done, they're respected. And in your mind, you're thinking, oh, they're next. The next opening, the next promotion, the next leadership role that comes available, regardless of the level of leadership that they are right now, but that next level of leadership, you're thinking about them. And you start to have the conversation. Maybe you open the door. Maybe you even mention it to them. And instead of excitement, you get hesitation. Or you get a polite, yeah, I'm not sure that that's for me. I don't think I'm interested in that. Now that can be kind of confusing. It is confusing when you have some of your top people that are just not interested in leadership, because from your perspective, it's a reward. Getting the promotion or getting the opportunity to lead other people or to help to develop other people might be a reward for you. But I want to talk today about what does it look like from their perspective? Because it may not look like a reward. It might look like a trade-off that's not worth it. So I want to talk about what they're actually seeing. Actually, I was talking to my marketing person about this, and she spent some time in the military, and she said she had a great performer that she was trying to get positioned to take a sergeant role, and they were just not interested at all. They didn't want to do it. And she was a little bit perplexed by that because they were really good at what they were doing and they seemed to be a great fit for that role. So let's talk about what might be getting in the way, what they're seeing, what might be happening, and what are some conversations you can have, or maybe what some things you can pay attention to and address for them to make that transition a little bit smoother, or at a minimum, help them to consider it and think about it in a different way. So the first thing I'll say is you actually are promoting them for who they've been, but not so much for who they need to become. And that can be a little bit tricky because the very thing that made them successful may not be what's going to make them successful in leadership. They're the best doer. They're reliable. They're the one who never drops the ball. And then we say, great, now go manage people. And I have a few clients that I call them the accidental leader because this is what happened to them. They're like, oh yeah, I was doing so great. And it feels the reward is there, but then they don't get set up in the right way. No one says to them, and think about this, if this is a conversation that you have, are they set up with, hey, you're about to feel incompetent all over again. It's a new role. It's a new level. And so while you have a lot of knowledge, that knowledge isn't always going to be what saves you in this new environment. No one tells them that your value is going to shift from doing to thinking and influencing. Is that something that they're interested in? And are we setting them up to be thinkers and strategic thinkers when they're so used to seeing a problem and solving a problem? We don't tell them, hey, you might lose clarity, the clarity that made you feel confident. And that doesn't feel like a promotion. It's because it's in some ways, it's more of an identity disruption than it is anything else. And that doesn't feel great, particularly when there is no support. So they're seeing things from a totally different way. They're like, well, what does this actually mean for me? Another thing that can occur is that, and they see this happening as well, is you pile on responsibility, but then there's no clarity. You give them more and more and more, but nothing ever gets redefined for what does good look like, particularly if they are an A player and if they're a perfectionist and everything that they do is fantastic. Sometimes we have to let people know that C work is good enough in this case. I don't need A plus work here. This could be B minus or C plus. I remember the first time somebody said that to me and I was like, what? What are you saying? That I intentionally turn in C work? But we also have to help those that we want to step into a different role understand that not everything has the same level of importance, and that we have to not allow being done getting in the way of, I think I said that backwards. Don't allow perfection to get in the way of getting something done. So this is where you have to do a great job of helping them to understand what they are responsible for and what they are not. Because what's happening is they are now responsible for others' performance. But sometimes there aren't any clear decision rights. What can they actually make decisions on? Do they have real authority, or is it just pretend authority? And people see that if there's no real authority in the role where I can't make decisions, then that's also not something that's very attractive. So they're accountable for things that they don't have control over while they're still being measured like they do have control over it. Those things have to get worked out. That's how burnout happens, because there's so much confusion and lack of clarity that you got your leaders running around doing everything instead of deciding where they need to spend their time and where they can delegate and give that to someone else. Another thing that's happening is they're watching the current leaders. They're watching that peer group, the peer group that you're wanting to put them in. They're looking at them and they're watching what they're already doing. Do they see just constant meetings with no thinking time or no downtime? Are they seeing stress, pressure, and people just simply reacting versus having time to put together a response? Do they see people being stuck in the middle and not having a place to go to move things forward? And if that's the case, why would they want to put themselves in that position? They could very quickly and easily just say, you know what, I'm good where I am. This is totally fine. I get the support that I need. I know exactly what I'm doing. That does not sound attractive at all. And to that point, another thing that they see sometimes is that there is no real development path or plan. I will tell you that I've seen people thrive when coaching exists. So whether that's having someone like me come in that's outside of the organization and can be very objective and can have conversations and meet with people, they can say whatever they need to say, talk about whoever they need to talk about because I'm not there, I have no idea. Or if there's a culture of coaching and feedback, that tends to be an environment where people can thrive and not get stuck and struggle. But when we're asking them to take on one of the most complex roles there is in an organization, which is leading people, because, sometimes we get a little wacky. People do some wacky things. They have some wacky ideas. We have to know how to handle that and deal with that. We're also asking them to navigate conflict. We're asking them to deal with change management. We're asking them to influence up or manage up. We're asking them to make decisions with incomplete information. And then you say things like, oh, you're doing great, you'll figure it out. Without really acknowledging or giving them a reprieve for some of the stress that they are feeling. So when people don't have a place to process what they're experiencing, it builds up and it builds up fast. And they're looking at that. They're watching that. They're seeing that. And there's no clear path. There's no clear communication for what kind of support do I get? How do I have time for this? And how much time do I have to transition fully into this role? Another conversation that might be interesting to have is they may not be saying no to leadership, but they might be saying no to or having a fear of losing themselves. So sometimes what comes up is, gosh, can I do that job? Is that something that is a good fit for me? Will I still be me in this role, in this job? They might be considering and thinking about, will I lose the part of the work that I actually enjoy? So here the thought becomes, why would I leave the part that I think it's great, that I'm great at, for something that I'm not even sure that I would like? And that is a very important conversation to have. Another thing that people might be concerned about is, am I going to become the person that everyone complains about? Right now, I'm the go-to. Right now, I'm the expert. But do I then get to be the one that everyone beats up? And will I constantly feel behind? So some of it might be an emotional, internal questions about, what does this look like for me? And another aspect to that is, what does that peer group look like? Do I see myself operating with this new peer group? Do I have to change who I am? Which leads me to the next thing that they might be seeing, which is a peer group that is on the same team technically, but not operating as though they're on the same team. They're seeing silos where people are just kind of hoarding the information, and they have their fiefdom that they're dealing with, and that's it. They might be watching leaders compete rather than collaborate. They might see information being withheld and games being played. Things like, well, that's not my area, giving that kind of energy. There might be some passive resistance going on instead of real conversations dealing with issues. And it looks like navigating some kind of political landmine, which that's just not fun. That's not fun, particularly if someone is coming from a team where those things are not present. So if leadership doesn't look like real influence, that may not be attractive to your top performers and your top players, because they're thinking, why would I want to put myself in that pool where you guys aren't even getting along? That doesn't make any sense to me. They might be happy, just look, I can put my head down, I can do my job, I can do my work, and I don't have to bother anybody. For some people, that might be what's holding them back, is they're looking at that next level and going, that's not what I want. So if that's real or if that's perceived, it might be your perception. So that's a conversation. If it's real, then there's probably some deeper issues that need to be resolved and some things that need to happen for this type of top player to come in. And the other thing that happens there is, sometimes when the wrong, I don't want to say the wrong, but when bad behavior gets rewarded, I think people get sick of that as well. When you have the person that is not, collaborating or building a culture of, hey, we're doing this together in teamwork, and the one that's being political and being cutthroat, when those are the ones that are constantly being rewarded and getting promoted, that's not attractive to people who don't want to play in that pool and want to swim in that. So if that's what you want to cultivate as a culture among your leaders, then you've got to start shifting that culture and helping them to make that move so they can influence it. Another thing that they might see is that no one is actually making decisions. Decisions get kicked down the timeline. We'll circle back is a phrase that gets made fun of a lot. Or they might see some decisions get made, but then get undone, where I make the decision, but then immediately it gets thrown back or pulled back because someone else has something else to say. That will happen occasionally, but when it happens consistently, they realize that there's no real power. And they might be thinking, wait, so I'm accountable, but I don't actually get to decide. I made a decision that I think is the best course of action, but now you're telling me that's not the course of action, and yet I'm the one that's accountable for a decision that I actually didn't make. Again, conversations. Is that something that is attractive to the people that you want in those roles? So all of those elements, team dynamics, you see underperformance, pressure from above, you see others protecting their team while, trying to manage expectations on the outside. All of that looks very exhausting, and it doesn't look attractive. So for them thinking that, this reward does not match the cost, what it's going to take me, they're doing the math. They're going, well, there's more responsibility, there's more complexity, there's more exposure, there's more stress. In exchange, what do I get? I get a slight pay increase. I get less control over my time. I get less connection to the work that I'm happy with. And then they're looking at you like, and you're calling this an upgrade. Is that what we're talking about here? So when your top performers hesitate, it may not necessarily be a lack of ambition. It might be how they are seeing things and how they're perceiving things. Because leadership as they're seeing it doesn't necessarily look like growth. It looks like some kind of trade-off without the support. So if they're watching all of this and they're deciding that it's not worth it, the question becomes, what would they need to see in order to decide or to make a different decision? What would make leadership worth it? So let's talk about a few things that would actually make leadership worth it to them. The first thing is that they need to see that leadership is actually sustainable. They need to understand or know that they are able to create boundaries. There's always going to be gray area. There's always going to be that uncertainty. There's always going to be things that aren't very clearly defined. But when they can make some of those boundaries and the things that can be clearly defined, let's make those decisions. They want to know that they don't have to be in reaction mode all day long. Because if it's just about surviving the day, and leadership looks like I just have to endure, no one's signing up for that. Making it clear that you're not looking for perfection, you're not looking for everything that needs to be polished, that they have the opportunity to create a role and that the role can be sustainable, and designing and figuring out what that is and what that looks like. The other thing that's important that they understand is they do need clarity, not just a title. Sometimes these titles, what do they actually mean? So before they say yes, they need to understand what they're actually stepping into. And it's not just about, oh, you'll figure it out. You're going to do great. I believe in you. Yes, that's important. And it's certainly not just keep doing more of what you're doing. It's, well, what does success look like? What are your expectations for this role? What decisions are mine to make? What am I no longer responsible for? We pile on, and then we don't help people to figure out how to prioritize, or we don't help people to figure out what to take off their plate, and teaching them how to delegate and who to delegate to. So these are some moments of clarity that, while it still remains challenging, it removes some of the confusion. Another thing they need to see is real support, not just expectations. And if you're asking someone to lead other people, they need space and a place to learn how to do that. We think that it's intuitive. It is not. They are dealing with their own identity. They're dealing with their own change, their own shift. And now they're going to be responsible for a team of people. And it's not always so cut and dry. So they need a space to talk through situations and what's going on. They need to process what they're experiencing. They need to learn how to give and receive feedback. Both that's performance-based, but also as they continue to grow in this transition where they're getting feedback for those things. And giving them time to become who you're asking them to become, that is paramount. Because it definitely requires a transition, particularly for people that are like, I've done this before. And even for people that are good with other people, doesn't necessarily mean they know how to step in and manage them. It's a very different thing when they're like the friend that everyone comes to, but now they have to make decisions about what to do in certain circumstances. And when those decisions become really hard, especially when it comes to being critical, giving critical feedback, when it comes to giving raises, when it comes to saying yes or no to certain requests that come in, those things are hard to deal with. And we can't just assume that people know how to do it. They need to see leaders who actually collaborate. Now, this may be outside of your control, but you can consider if there's just a bunch of silos and instead they saw leaders that were working together, sharing information, aligning openly, solving problems together, that changes the job completely. Because then leadership is a system. It's not just a single sport. It really is a system and a team that works together that everyone then can raise up and do some incredible things together. And then the final thing that I'll say is that they need to see and understand that they don't have to lose themselves in this role. They don't have to change who they are. This is just an opportunity that they can adapt who they are in this elevated space. So right now, leadership probably looks like a lot more work, but instead, if we could focus on it's helping to shape direction, it's helping to develop other people, it's helping to make meaningful decisions, that's a different job. And that's a job that people want to do. People who are doing great work, yes, there is a personal reward to that, but they're also doing it to contribute to what else is going on in the organization. And if they could somehow learn to develop other people to do that as well, that's something that I would say that people would actually enjoy. So when leadership is done well, it doesn't have to feel like a burden. There are some burdensome aspects to it for sure, 100%, and we have to be clear about that. But the whole thing doesn't have to feel like a burden. It can feel like a bigger way to contribute. So if your best people aren't raising their hand, it may not be because they don't want more, even though that's what they might say. And there are going to be some that are just not interested. But there are a few that they're stuck at one of these points, one of these elements. Either there's some internal things going on or they're just seeing things that just does not look attractive to them. And those are conversations that you can have with them. Because if it looks like something that they don't want to become, they're not going to want to step into it. And consider if someone on your team watched you for a week, would they want your job? How you handle it, how you handle yourself, your own boundaries, how you're dealing with situations and circumstances and hard conversations and giving feedback. Would they want that? Right now, a lot of things that are happening in leadership that people are watching, they're quietly deciding it's not worth it. Think about some of those people that you think, gosh, they would be so great. And it's not so much about convincing them, but showing them that leadership in your organization is something worth stepping into and that they can continue to build that culture and the influence that they're actually looking for. And as you're considering that, figure out how to set them up for success. Because people don't want the role and then just feel like they're getting dropped off. And they see that happen time and time and time again. I hope this was helpful. Think about what conversations you can have with some of those top performers about where they are and what might be holding them back. I'd love to hear from you. Leave me a comment, drop me an email, and I'll keep looking for those. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Hey, if something in this episode resonated, I want you to know you don't have to navigate it alone. This is the work we do inside the Leadership Lab, building capacity, strengthening decision-making, and learning how to lead with intention through change. If you're curious about working together, you'll find more information in the show notes. I'm glad you were here. I'll see you next time.